My husband got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer on Halloween 2011. The day that celebrates death, my husband got served a death sentence. How wonderful. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was like being hit by a freight train while having a picnic. I was on my way to learning a new industry in entertainment, and I got unplugged. At first, when we got the news, it was surreal, but I knew that something was wrong ahead of time. Call it woman's instinct, call it whatever you want, but I knew. I wasn't happy about it. It confirmed it. I knew the moment my husband called me that the doctor wanted to meet with both of us. I knew something was up. He hadn't been looking good, hadn't been feeling good. But stage 4 cancer with months to live without chemo? And there was nothing physical to fight. Everything in me, my survival instinct kicked in, but there was nothing physical to fight. And then I thought, oh, how stupid. It wasn't me that got cancer. It was my husband that got cancer. But when I was pregnant with our children, it wasn't me that was pregnant. It was we were pregnant. And I'm coming to find out that this is a we situation. It affects both of us. On one hand, it was his job to fight the disease. And on the other hand, it was my job to take care of everything else. Doctors, legal stuff, bills, unplugging from work seemed natural because he needed me. In the same way that I produce results at work, I needed to be home to produce results with him. It was hard to change everything from his eating to his supplements to everything. And it was hard to see him waste away. It was hard to see him be sick in the hospital. It was hard to see him thin and under the morphine and ashen gray, but it wasn't without hope. We had faith, and we both pray regularly. We believed in Yahweh and that we trusted Him with our lives, but that took on a whole nother meaning now. And it came in waves because you're learning as you're surviving, as you're trying to beat and stay ahead of this cancer that grows so much faster than anything else in your body. And so it was strange because everybody tried to throw information at you thinking it was helping, and that was great. But when you get 50 to 75 people doing the same thing and you're trying to stay on top of doctor's visits and doctors' diagnoses that tell you that he is not going to make it past a certain amount of time or that he'll never go back to a full-time job, and you face that, and then you deal with all the information that's coming in from other people and their frustration with you not choosing the journey that they would have chose if they were you. And that fear turns to anger, and you find yourself having to bite your tongue because you don't want to hurt them or make them feel less important. So I ended up making a Facebook page so that people could get updates on my husband without having to directly deal with me and call me. And that really helped. It cut down the calls a lot. And I really requested all of my friends and family to get their updates from there. And I chose Facebook over any other site like Caring Bridge or other places or a blog because I would be able to upload video and pictures a lot easier. More people were on Facebook than any other site. A couple months in, I got inspired by a concept of a message in a bottle through the United Filmmakers Association in San Francisco. I asked myself, what would I do if I got a message in a bottle? And I let that stew for a couple weeks. And then one evening while I was getting ready for the night, I got it downloaded, this picture, this movie entered in my head. And it hit me so hard that I called out to Mark and he came in as fast as he could. You know, he wasn't very fast at that time. And I just clung to him and cried because the emotions were coming to the surface and I was seeing this scene unfold of finding the bottle and having to deal with the question. And the next day it came out in like 3 hours. I'd never written anything so fast. Never written a script that fast. I cried like a baby, snot-nosed and everything through it as conversations and prayers that I had secretly said or that we had had poured out of me onto paper. And when I was done, I gave it to my husband and he read it and he bawled. And he read it again and he bawled a second time. And my husband doesn't cry. Very rarely does he cry. So I shared it with a couple friends and they all cried. My husband said, "You need to make this film." My friend said, "You need to make this film." Spoke with the United Filmmakers Association and they said they'd love to use it as a piece of the larger film. I entered the film into a local film festival and then I planned, just in case it got chosen, I started pre-production. And it didn't make it into the film festival. But by the time I found that out, the story started morphing. Originally, the film was supposed to happen on the docks of Sacramento. And then I thought, well, what's going to happen if I can't afford the permit in order to film there? Which means I need to do all private locations. And I remembered the Biblical Gardens. I'd been there 3 or 4 times. It's one of my favorite places to go because it's just so beautiful and so peaceful. It's up in Grass Valley, California. And my husband and I went up there. He had never been there before, so I brought him up there. And we were just talking. And he said, "Wouldn't it be incredible if this is where Brad and Christine met?" And I went, "This would be a gorgeous place to film that." And then we were talking to the gentleman who oversaw the place, and a woman drove up in this little Mini Cooper, like 1960s Mini Cooper, gets out with this red rose in her hand. And I'm drawn to roses because that's my birth flower, and my nickname's Singing Rosebud. So I was like, "Oh, are you here to remember someone?" Because they do a lot of memorials at these places. And she goes, "No. I'm here to meet a date for the first time." And my husband and I's jaw dropped. We couldn't believe it. We were like, "You're kidding me." And at that point, the story changed. And it went more in a faith-based direction, a more personal direction. I decided to make Brad and Christine, Brad a pastor and Christine a pastor's wife, because at the Biblical Gardens, it was very faith-based, and we're a very faith-based couple, and Mark is very much the kind of pastor in our house, and so very much symbolized our relationship, and I thought brought a lot of depth into the film. So we had auditions, found some phenomenal actors and actresses. Originally, we had a gentleman named Peter Oakes, you see that in the credits, as playing Pastor Brad. And we had hired him. The gentleman, Brian, that we had was also very good. It was a very, very difficult decision. And we started the first day, and he wasn't feeling very well and didn't look like he was feeling very well. And so we finished shooting and filming the first day, and he was only there for a couple hours. And 4 days later, after we started that first day shoot, he got diagnosed with stage 4 head and neck cancer. And it was like, oh my gosh. So he had to, switch his focus to fighting the cancer. So we hired Brian. Brian was so gracious to help us reshoot at the last minute and some of the scenes. Luckily, we'd only gotten one small scene of the bridge done with Peter, so we were able to redo that, not a problem. Also, on the kickoff party, we found out Allison, who is the production coordinator and the makeup and stylist, she found out her mother had stage 3B ovarian cancer, which is the worst you can get. And that was hard. She was very hopeful. Even the day that we did the hospice scene, that day she did makeup on him, and it was the first time that she ever did the makeup. Also that day, she had found out how serious her mom's cancer was, and didn't even know how prolific what she was going through at that time would eventually be. But they wouldn't let me see him until we shot the film. I shot the scene, and I remember walking in and walking out going, I'm going to need something to calm me down. So I had a glass of wine and sat back and just watched this scene unfold and went through it 4 takes and cried through each and every one of them. And Mark was sitting next to me, and we just hugged each other and just watched this beautiful scene being unfolded and thinking, what would we say to each other if this was us? It was an incredibly powerful, sobering moment. Luckily, before we started filming, Mark stopped his first set of chemo. And so we filmed the film during the break of his chemo, and then his chemo started back up right near the end of filming. And so I had to go back to work because we needed to financially support the family. I needed to financially support the family. So between him going back to on chemo and me going back to a new job, it was a good 2 to 3 months before I was able to face the story again in order to edit. I continued editing from October to end of November around Thanksgiving. And then a couple weeks later, my friend David came in and did the music. And that was yet another journey into the emotion of this film. In the middle of all this happening, Allison's mother passed away about 6 months after she got diagnosed. That very day, I went to church. I didn't want to, but my friend Dave said, you need to go. So I went to church. And that day, they did a video for a new cancer support group called Bridgeway to Hope. And my jaw just dropped. And I went, okay, God, what are you saying? And then the pastor started to preach. And he was teaching on 1 Corinthians 13, which is at the very end of the film in the letter. And I lost it. I started weeping. And it was God's way of saying, I know what you're going through. I hear it. I gave you the gift of this movie so you could face the emotions and you can get through this. I will get you through this. And it was enough to finish the rest of the film. And now I can watch the film and go along this journey with Christine and feel like it is a huge hug. This warmth, peace comes over me, and knowing that I will get through it just like Christine got through it. Whatever happens in the end, no matter where this journey takes us, whether he is gone in a couple years or he outlives me, that God will be with us through this journey. And that's the message of this DVD, is that no matter what we face, God's glory will outshine any of the sorrow this world puts us through. And in essence, this very short film is the message in the bottle being sent out. And it's not up to me as to what happens. It's up to God on what happens. Romans 8:18, for I do not consider the suffering of this time to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed in us. That is a personal scripture that I have held on to for years and years and years. Years. And it seemed so appropriate to start that movie off with that scripture. And 1 Corinthians 13 is special to Mark and I because it was in our wedding vows that we spoke to one another. So this story, this film, is basically my heart on my sleeve, wrapped in a bow, and given to you. And I hope that God moves, and wherever you are, whatever journey you're on, whatever trial that you're facing, maybe you got this DVD and you have a friend going through this and you don't know how to help that person. Prayer is huge. I cannot tell you how many times I was in a waiting room and I felt this peace. And it didn't make logical sense. And I felt the prayers. It was like someone holding me up on either side. Spend time with your friends. Spend time with those who are fighting cancer, because time and the lack of quality time is what you face the most. Despair is a lonely babysitter. Don't think that anything is too small. Cannot tell you how many times we got a random card from a stranger with just the perfect prayer in it, or just the perfect poem, or just the perfect amount of money to cover a bill, or maybe the very veggies that we needed in order to get him healthy again. Never underestimate what you can provide. Something as simple as even helping the child of a family member going through cancer, whether it's taking them shopping or, whatever. It's crazy, the amount that's on the shoulders of a caregiver. Anyways, I digress. I hope that the Lord touches you through this DVD. If you'd like to follow our story from beginning to present, you can check out our Facebook fan page at www.facebook.com/thereisnoI in cancer. God bless you.